Hi, good morning, everyone. And it's my pleasure and privilege to be here among such distinguished panel members. Just to kickstart today's discussion, I'll request the panel members for a quick introduction, and we'll take it from there.
Hello, Satyen. I'm with Celio for the last 6 years. Prior to that, worked with Levi's for 9 years. Consumer electronic industry, again 9 years with LG Electronics. Looking forward for an interesting session.
Hi, my name is Saurabh Jhingan. I am a director and one of the co-founders at Latin Quarters. We are a women's western wear brand. We've been around for a while now that I think about it, about 15, 16 odd years, and really happy to be here. I think looking forward to learning a lot of things from this distinguished panel.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Really happy to be here. I'm Alamjit. I worked with Bell. So I joined Bell about 5 years ago as the first employee. And Bell is a 150-year-old cheese company or dairy snacking company. And one of the brands is the Laughing Cow. So that's what I work on. Prior to that, I worked with Nestle, Maggi, and other food brands. So very happy to interact with all of you and learn a few things as well.
Hi, good morning. I'm Mahesh Reddy. I'm the CEO for GOPIZZA India. Just to brief about the company, GOPIZZA is a food tech company. It's a South Korean company, and we are present at South Korea, Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand. And at India, we started from Bangalore after COVID. And we got around 25 outlets. We just covered South market. That's Hyderabad, Chennai, Bangalore markets in this year. We'll have 100 outlets by this year end. That's our target. GOPIZZA, the USP, we are different. The USP is we are 4S, that is size, shape, speed, and space. So that's a speciality. The pizza itself is an oval-shaped pizza, and it's a different pizza concept. And we are into Web 3.0 and Industry 4.0 with AI and robotic. And that's the model with scalable and profitable model. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm Digvijay Ghosh. I'm a partner with EY Consulting, and I focus on route to market and digital commerce growth. With that, let's get started. And I'll start with you, Alamjit. So what I wanted to hear your thoughts on is how do you see the whole consumer behavior and their expectations changing when it comes to food, also in the premium segment of it. So what are the typical trends which you see in the market in terms of organic, consumption, artisanal cheese, so on and so forth?
Very interesting question, Digvijay. Thank you for this. I think in food, food is a matter which is very, very personal to everyone. And it's something that is something which sees a lot of experimentation. And that experimentation will continue to increase. And there will be always a continual rise in terms of saying, okay, I want to try this, I want to go more organic. So the first one is just very basic, something very, very tasty and delicious for the family, which is also nutritious. So that's the first need, if I may say. Then as people go along it, then it starts to become more nuanced in terms of saying, okay, now I use this ingredient, which is also organic or this. But that is still very, very small out here. So there's a growing trend, will increase. And then there'll also be some people who will be talking more about, I use this particular ingredient, I use sun-dried tomatoes for this particular dish from here and there. So will increase, but pretty small. And consumers, the way they look at food is not really in terms of saying, okay, how much, because a lot of questions come in terms of what's the value of this ingredient, what price consumers pay, what is premium, and how do you define it? Now, again, premium is a word that gets, misused a lot. Even 10% premium can be premium, even 200, 300% premium can be premium. But that's not really premium, that's like a very, very different category. When it's something which is more manageable, I would say up to 20, 30%, consumers will look at it more in terms of, okay, what is it that it helps me create? And I'm okay paying that sort of value and doing it on a more regular base. Translating it into what we do. So cheese, and it's clear that we will never be the lowest cost. And one could never do that because there'll never be a sustainable business model. It's more about saying, like Mahesh was saying, what's the USP that we offer? what is it that we stand for in a consumer's mind? And what we stand for is to say, okay, whatever you create with this will always be more delicious than something else. It'll always be more nutritious because the primary need of food is also nutrition. It's not going to be the only selling point. And at the same time, can we do it in a manner which also brings a smile to consumers with the laughing cow? So with that, whenever we've had any trial, consumers will never look at the price. The sales team will always come back and say, no, on a price per gram, this is X percentage higher. But that's not how a consumer will look at it. They read the back panel, but they'll say, okay, one serve is only costing me 10, 15, whatever, 18 rupees. And that's 2 rupees more than what another competitor will be. And I'm okay with that. I hope that that kind of addresses what you had in mind.
No, absolutely, that does. But there is a follow-up thought which comes up that, this is a kind of category, especially in cheese, and I'm sure that is true in your respective categories as well.
And that moment of truth happens in your taste buds. Then you'll be like, aha, what they're saying is right. So what we see is that so our influencers are actually the people in the stores, who is what we call the Laughing Cow champions, and they're there in about 100 odd stores. And the job that they have is just go meet as many consumers as possible and then have them try the product. And once the trial happens, a conversion is as high as 70 to 80%. Now, influencers are also important, and we use them strategically, like even during COVID. And I was talking to you about laughter being one of the core values for us. So even at that time, so we have this mascot, which is the red cow, and we sent her or the IKON to a lot of influencers' homes with just a bundle of happiness, which was different cheese products. And at that time, what people were trying to do, they couldn't have access to, I would say, sometimes interesting food ingredients. And they were all so overjoyed. So they decided to click videos with the mascot and put it with the family, saying how overjoyed they were with this. So I think strategically, and we paid them nothing. It was just the power of creating happiness for people and consumers. So that's how we treat them as consumers, but consumers with a higher reach.
Interesting. How about you, Satyen? Because in apparel, fashion, high fashion specifically, influencers would probably play a significant role. How do you see that side emerging?
So in fact, in apparel, so if you were to look at social commerce, one of the fastest growing channels. And I think given the disparity we have in India, given the population and the geography disparity, the micro-influencers and the influencers, it's not necessary just to have huge influencers, but I think getting the right person and actually connecting with their deep engaging community is, I think, what makes the difference. So for us, we really partner with a few influencers, and I think the results have been outstanding. So what really helps is, I think it just not only helps brand awareness, but as I said, the community which they have, the fan following, if you're really able to appeal with them with the specific product category which you think when you would have done the selection of the influencer, I think it really works well. So getting the right influencer, doing a little bit of a study on when you get an influencer on board, and not only working with macro influencers, but even micro influencers, I think it really helps. And it's not just only for social commerce, but it also helps your offline and helps your brand overall.
No, interesting. And in fact, obviously the power of that is also how you can reach the deeper markets, the tier 2, tier 3 markets, as well as in a very hyper-local manner. And, I'm sure, Mahesh, in your line, as you open stores, you will find some of that relevant as well. Right?
On a lighter note, I think so influencers have taken the role of marketing managers. Influencers can make it or break it. And I think so that's the future. I've seen the best of the influencers who has got good followers can take it to the millions of, easy way to reach out to the millions of followers, and the same way in the bad way also. But only one disadvantage I see is of what is called paid marketing, paid influencers, few of the companies which are using, but it may not be a long term. Ultimately the customers will decide. For the first time, yes, influencers works. For the second time, it is your product and it is your customer, and customer decides is the product suits to them and it's value for money.
So moving to you, Satyen, Celio as a brand is obviously more in the premium segment. You were mentioning how the first store opened in a very upmarket mall in Delhi, and then subsequently in Palladium and so on and so forth. When you look at your store strategy today, given that consumers are expecting commerce everywhere and they are much more aware, thanks to digital and the penetration of that, do you see a change in your store strategy, store opening strategy, as you look at expansion in India?
So I'm a big believer of brick and mortar retail. So it's just that I think what you can really deliver to the consumer is outstanding. So if you were to look at post-COVID, so honestly, even during COVID, fortunately, we were able to get the right commercials with most of our mall developers. We didn't shut any of our stores. In fact, we stepped up our expansion both here and in our home country, France. So what's really working is, I think you cannot just open stores and keep the store like the normal. So I think what really needs to be done post-COVID and the learning which we've got is, I think, the new retail which is really coming up, right from getting your brand consultant or your store influencer, the brand ambassador, to really understand that you're not now only welcoming and packing goods and giving this, but really getting the new service rituals in. And I think the way is to really integrate digital with your brick and mortar. And I think it just helps. So the amount of data, amount of reach which you get through digital, and that's just supporting brick and mortar terrifically. So I think if you're able to get this act right, so honestly for us, we have stepped up our expansion in retail. We are looking at this year, in fact the last year which we ended was one of our best like-for-like growth years for our brick and mortar, and digital obviously growing much faster. So I think if you really evolve to the new way of retail with integration of digital with brick and mortar, I think it just supports brick and mortar even more. And I think that's what the consumers, even if you look at post-pandemic, if you look at the data which some of our mall developers have published, there is a big surge on footfall. So it also shows that consumer really wants to come back and enjoy the shopping experience, which for us, shopping and going to a store is not just going to pick up a commodity, but I think it's an experience, and you cannot take away that experience of going to a mall or going to a high street and shopping. So I think I firmly believe that it's how quickly you adapt to really getting from a multi-channel to an omni-channel approach, and then really helping brick and mortar to live up to the consumer expectations.
You want to say?
No, I feel, first of all, we all need to be proud that we are Indians and we are at the right place and at the right age and at the right time. This much of potential, especially for my industry, that's QSR, no investors or no customers or no employees would have seen it. With the GDP what we are growing, the population which was a concern, I feel it's become a consumption. The roads, which we call it as holes in the roads, but let's say positive way, if you see, we can connect from Jammu to Kanyakumari. And this much of logistic help no other country will have. Like for example, if you take Singapore, if you just cross 10 kilometers, there's water. If you cross 15 kilometers, there's mountain. So, but whereas in India, this is helping us. And as a format, what you asked, GoPizza as a format with, I feel we can open from 250 square feet to 2,000 square feet. You name the format. It can be airport, it can be hospitals, it can be standalone, it can be malls, everywhere. So the formats have to be made, which can be expanded, and that's where the India is being focused, and everywhere we can be present. So if your format is a scalable model, and if the format can be affordable, it can be opened everywhere, and that's the potential which India, if Singapore can have only 50 outlets, India can have 10,000 outlets, and that's the potential. So we all have to be lucky that we are at the right era and the right place, and next 5 years, I feel it's ours, and we will define that.
No, that's a fair and interesting thought. I do want to pick your brain also on the how consumers' expectation changing and evolving as they come to a store. Like, a few years back, it wasn't too common an experience to see that consumer walk into a store and then scan the product and see the price online and then compare and things like that. So how do you see their expectation evolving in terms of pricing? How do you see loyalty playing a role in this? And like you touched upon the fact that can you reimagine the retail staff, as fashion consultants who, give a differentiated experience to the consumer? So how do you see all of this changing in conjunction of DTC as well?
So I think the consumer behavior is changing much faster than we can imagine, actually. In fact, for many apparel brands, at least I think we are a little bit of a catch-up game. So the consumer is already there. So he's already omni-channel. So he's, in fact, looking at, I just to take an example of what I saw in the Mahindra XUV launch, you just go physically see the car, and then you actually are booking it online, and then you get your data on when are you going to get the delivery and all that. The touch point is actually happening digital. So if a 20 plus this lakh product, or even even if you were to look at real estate, so a lot of things are moving digital. So obviously, do we have to move where the consumer is? We obviously have to get where the consumer is, and I think the faster we get there, the better it is. So for us, we moved from a multi-channel to an omni-channel approach. So I think the whole thought process was in the stores, how can we just help? So digital just for the sake of digital doesn't make any sense. So for us, just to put up a mirror, magic mirror, or putting up something of this sort was not the priority. But I think what are the bottlenecks and how can we really make the consumer experience as seamless as possible? If he's bought somewhere and if he wants to exchange it somewhere, he's getting points when he shops in retail, and if he doesn't get it when he shops on your own website, how can you actually make the experience as seamless as possible was our first attempt. So we wanted to really attempt that. And then when you get into store, how can we really elevate the consumer shopping experience and actually empower your store manager or fashion consultant to really, if there are inventory data, can the store manager have access to the entire system inventory, including the warehouse, online, live? And can he really save the sale? Or actually, when we say if some size is not available, can he really look at where is the nearest available and then give commitments to the consumer? So these are things which we've really worked on. The biggest, honestly, change which we really worked on was the AI use for actually buying, forecasting, and replenishing goods. So right, as per the store. So normally earlier we used to actually segment stores. So if you have 700 point of sale, we used to actually bucket them into four criterias and actually buy as per those four segments. But now what we've really moved in the last 2.5, 3 years is actually every store, what consumer, is it a more skinny bottom consumer, is it a more 28, 30 waist size consumer? So the store allocation is actually happening as per each store and not just a segment. And hence the roll up happens from the store to actually coming up to your buying and hence forecasting and then replacement. So I think digital, a lot of it supporting actually brick and mortar to deliver better consumer experience is what we've really gone through. And I think that's helping deliver, like you said, the consumer behavior is changing. How are you really able to live up to that expectations?
Thanks. No, so that's a segue to use of technology and digital in building retail footprint. So Mahesh, I wanted to check with you your thoughts, because given the kind of store expansion vision that you have in India, how do you use data and technology to open up stores, identify which are the right hotspots, because you're on the go consumption products, so you really need to be at the right spot for it to build up. So any thoughts there?
Yeah, before coming to the AI and technology, I thought I'll come to the trends point of it, or the thing. Before coming onto the board of GOPIZZA, even I was thinking, how can the pizza be oval shape or a different size? When I'm only not able to accept, how will the customers will accept? But that was a mindset which I had, that how will customers accept? So I had to do a lot of R&D and a lot of research. Then we thought, how do we go as per the trend, as you rightly said? So that present trend what we had, it's a South Korean company. So we used BTS. We used, as you know, COVID was an opportunity to see a lot of K-pop and the Parasite movie getting Oscar. So a lot of guys are familiar with the Korean dramas. Now there are at least all the outlets which are front of the schools. Believe me or not, all the students are not going to the school, college. They're sitting in the outlet, watching BTS music, eating the pizza. So that's the trend change again. Then the Squid Game which had come, it had a Dalcon dessert. We just launched the dessert. The kids, instead of, after the school they were coming, they were just licking that, and to make that, all the codes on the Dalcon to win that prize. So that became again a trend. So if we associate any brand as per the present trend, as per the present wave, and that we interact with more, when we engage with the customers, it helps on it. Now coming to the AI and technology, as you rightly said, India has a potential, and we will open, of course, this 100 and next year will be 300. That's our target which we have taken. Scalable is easy in India. Format is possible, but if your technology is not set, then it's difficult. The problem which happens when we scale is the consistency, and that too in India is more because of different people, different state, different taste. So that's why the AI and robotic is helping us at a back end. The AI which we have launched, it ensures the boy who's making the pizza, he cannot put more sauce, more cheese, or less sauce, less cheese, exact topping. So the consistency across everywhere. So now if I hire, even from a rural area, I have to only teach him, just stand in front of the camera, camera will tell you what to do. I don't have to teach him English, because if you have good English, if you got good graduation, they will only think, why should I join you, sir? I'll join a call center, I get a better pay. So then the next challenge is hiring when we have more outlets, more competition, hiring the front-end staff. But that's where the technology will help us. And when we have this, now, as you rightly said on the inventory front, technology will tell how much to indent, how much to do. Otherwise, we have to put maths, logics, and again wastage, and then we judge him because you're not good. So, and that's how we have to equip, and that's how we can expand, and that's where I feel we are ready, and we are at the right spot.
And how do you see technology also providing good consumer experience? Like, I think you were talking about how pizza has to be ready in 5 minutes. Yeah. And, it's a very value-conscious, time-sensitive, product. So how do you ensure that the experience is spot on every time?
Yeah. Pizza normally takes 15 minutes across everywhere to prepare. So we had built in-house Go oven, which is a stone-based oven. The pizza comes in 5 minutes, and at least 10 pizza comes in 5 minutes. And pizza because of the technology, we are able to serve the pizza in 5 minutes. So that's the speed, which is the expectation from the customer. If you give it on time, and if you give it fresh, and if you give it hot, and within 5 minutes, the experience is always going to be good.
Can I just add a little bit to this entire thing on AI, data, and how that can be leveraged? So I think one of the ways we do it in terms of AI data is also from a consumer acquisition lens. And because online and even otherwise, there's so much data available. And what we can do even with our partner retailers is that we can figure out and say, okay, this particular consumer in the last 6 months has bought what brand of cheese? If they've not bought the Laughing Cow and they buy, say, competitor X's cheese block, how do we target them with what communication and what specific offer, which can then entice them to try this? And even it can be down to the fact that that sample can be delivered to that consumer only. And then after the trial happens, you can even map their journey in terms of saying, okay, now the next thing is they've tried a cheese block, but there is also a cheese slice, there's also a spread. What's the next format that we should have them try? Because it's about, an application will be different. So I think data is available, and it's more about figuring out and saying, because normally a retailer will not share that with you. And I guess you might see it more in your exclusive brand versus multi-brand outlets. But what we try and do is we work with the retailers and to say, okay, we both win together, because if your sales increase, then ours do too, or we are able to value up. So they share this, and then we never will get the number of the consumer or the email address. They will run it on our behalf, but it's something which helps create growth both ways. Down to what communication, what pricing, everything can be customized, and who gets the sample, and we track it. Even with sampling, etc., we'll get in excess of like 20% kind of conversions on this. And the last thing I'll talk about, this online, offline, I think even any of this KOL, etc. See, everything can have an access in terms of creating a consumer trial. And the cost, the question is going to be, what's the cost of trial of medium X versus Y versus Z? And that's the most important thing. Sometimes we just get swayed in saying, okay, a person, this medium has a reach of so many million. And let's just do it because it's something which is talk worthy and everyone will speak about it. But people don't focus on the other aspect at times, which is to say, okay, what does it cost? Like, in the end, consumers will always shop, the vision for us will be to be present wherever a consumer will shop. Now that means, if I just take a city like Mumbai, it means 100,000 outlets. Now, is it practical for me to be in 100,000 outlets today, and what's the cost to serve it? But maybe today, 5,000 outlets is where I want to be. And because it's more manageable to get there and supplement it online. And similarly, even KOL, non-KOL, which media option? So I think one thing that sometimes I see brands not doing as well is about how do you do it in a scalable manner? And that's the reason you sometimes get into places where you have startups with like immense valuation and suddenly falling flat because nobody really looked at the financial equation to see, okay, when will that business plan start to be profitable? Okay, that's just me.
Thanks for that. And that's a very important point to leave behind as well, how your cost of acquisition and customer lifetime value stack up. And unless that's making the business sense, then eventually you're not going to break even or make the business profitable. No, yeah, absolutely. I'd like to change the gear slightly and move towards Saurabh. Wanted to hear your thoughts. As Latin quarters, they have been making a significant foray towards tier 2, tier 3 towns. You also have fair amount of presence in the multi-branded outlet formats. How do you see consumer experience be different, or what are the similarities as you look at the stores and their performance in, say, a Delhi versus, say, in a smaller town?
So first of all, in terms of what we were talking about earlier, I think what you're selling to the customer is an experience. So you have stores, you have exclusive stores where you sell that experience to the customer, make them part of the community, make them part of your ecosystem. And then after that, whether they're buying from online or offline, and like the gentleman said, we will be wherever the customer is buying from us. The important part is the customer experiences your brand, and they are, enticed to buy your brand, make a connection with the brand. So I think that's sometimes gets lost in all this talk about digital and omnichannel, and ultimately the human touch. I mean, we've evolved to, be biased towards positive experiences. So I think we have to kind of remind ourselves of that. So coming back to your question, yes, I think we had a lot of misconceptions before we went to tier 2, tier 3 towns in terms of how the customer behaves, whether they have the capacity to spend, whether they are open to, since we are a fashion brand, whether they have, their sensibilities match with whatever products we are trying to put out there. So before going to a city like, let's say, Patna or Allahabad, we had all these misgivings. I think the truth of the matter is the customer expects the same kind of things that they expect from you in large metros. Yes, there are options available to them in larger cities. There is more competition there. But the advantage in tier 2, tier 3 is that if you are giving the product, so we customize our product for Indian sensibilities. Yes, you want to give them cutting edge fashion, but at the same time, it's customized to their values, to the way they want to experience your product. So what the customer expects is still the same. They still expect value. They still expect that you give them a nice shopping experience. All the product has to be. The advantage I feel is that they are, I think, starved for options in these towns, and that is where we feel that we have. Advantage in terms of, let's call it a first movers advantage, where the international brands maybe are not willing to go there just yet, or maybe it's just not profitable enough to have 30,000 square foot store, wherein a Latin quarters can go in there, give the customer the product, give them the experience, and you make a connection with that consumer, and hopefully you keep on delivering, and then you have a customer for life. So that's the way I think about that.
And do you also see this, as in the store expansion, become a prominent part of your direct-to-consumer strategy? Because I'm sure that one part is obviously cost of acquisition, which I think Alam touched upon. But the other part is also the supply experience and the cost of supplies. So do you see this also becoming prominently a part of your direct-to-consumer strategy? So.
So the way I look at it is, I think the exclusive stores have to very much be a part of your strategy going forward. Like I said, that is where the customer experiences your product. That is where you can deliver, what the brand, the values, what you actually stand for. Post that, whether they're buying from a large format store or whether they're buying online, or, that is wherever the customer is, that's where we are going to sell it to them. But they experience it in your store. So that is very much part of the strategy. I think as a brand, you have to deliver in your own stores. And in my opinion, it very much has to be a part of your growth strategy.
Yeah, so I agree. In fact, for us also, in the next 3 years, we're looking at taking up our D2C, both offline direct stores and our own website digitally, and including social commerce. We're really looking at 50% of the growth getting driven from D2C, so direct to consumer, both our own stores. And as you said, I think the data delivering consumer experience, consistent consumer experience. If you really want to do retail, you got to get to understand your consumer. You've got to get a 4-dimensional view of the consumer, and not just his mobile number and just give him points. So I think you've just got to understand the consumer much better, and I think D2C really helps us achieve that. And it's not just whether digital, but it's also digital and offline both.
And that and that brings me to the question of the store of the future, because it's one of those very classic points which has been discussed, debated quite a bit over the last few years. There's been many experiments in the market, be it a magic mirror or any of such. But what I wanted to invite your comments on is that what defines, in your view, for your brand, the store of the future in terms of maybe the experience for the consumer, maybe it's the technology that you use. Which parts do you see most evolving going forward?
So I think it's like the generative AI. So if you were to look at what ChatGPT is doing, I think honestly, how as we discussed, it's you got to get to omnichannel. I think so when you want to get consumers, when you talk only digital, how can I give him an experience of closest to touch and feel? So hence here AR, VR, I think these are some things which will really. So I was just somewhere I was experiencing the Geo, the one which now they're doing for the IPL, and if you look at, it's almost like replacing your stadium with the virtual reality headset, and it just looks like you're sitting in the stadium. So I think obviously no one will take away the touch and feel, but the future is how, when you are getting the consumer to experience your brand digitally, how are you really engaging with him and getting his experience elevated? And I think when you think of elevating that experience, for me it's getting closest to the touch and feel experience. And I think the startup ecosystem in India is outstanding. I think we are the pioneers in technology, and then if we don't use it, I think we will miss the bus. So for us, honestly, I spend at least 1 hour a week in actually looking at what's the startup ecosystem has to offer for retail, whether it's brick and mortar or D2C. So I think the future store is a amalgamation of some of these practices. So when you're shopping digital, how can you make his experience as closest to actually
the brand experience?
The touch and feel sort of thing. Okay. And when you are in your store, as I said, I think getting your consultant to really understand the consumer has already read about your brand, he's read about your product. How do you really help him? So I think the one small sort of a challenge is also the skill sets we've got to develop. So I think more than just the investments, I think the biggest challenge is how do we really get your mindset of yourself and your team to really evolve for the future store retail. So I think that's my take.
I think it's like two very dichotomous things that's going to happen. So the first is that from a consumer landscape, the consumer expectations will always keep increasing. And once you set an expectation at a certain benchmark, then the expectation will always go above, because that becomes a norm. So let's say, again, just I'll take an example from Q-commerce maybe. So earlier a consumer was very happy with e-com having a delivery the next day. Now people came in and said, I'll give it to you in 30 minutes. So 30 minutes became the norm. Now the next norm became 10 minutes. So whatever you set So the consumer expectation will keep on getting higher and higher and higher at one end. At the other end, it's going to be even more complex to kind of maintain that and at the same time live up to it. So let's say retail is what we're talking of and store. And right now I'll take store as just a loose example, physical, virtual, whatever. The cost of rentals will always keep increasing. And at the same time, consumers will want more assortment. Both things can't really happen, right? So either you have to start paying through your nose, or so how do you manage some of these things? It's about how the store of the future will delight consumers in terms of the experience. Again, taking a leaf from your book, maybe Satyen. So consumer goes in, not all the styles are available. I see a consumer being able to foresee and say, okay, I don't have this dress, sir, or ma'am, in your size, but this is how it will look on you, and it'll be delivered to you tomorrow. So it's about creating that kind of an experience wherein how do you use technology to delight them to say, okay, I don't allow the consumer to go back even if I don't have this with me, but creating a lifetime value with them. It's about creating at times, so consumers could go into, again, fashion will have a different list, food will have a different list. Some consumers will go in and say, okay, this is the 5 things that are essential for me, and the other 2 to 3 are going to be picked up at that time because I suddenly had an impulse on it. A retailer will always want that a consumer walks back having left a lot more on the table, and the consumer doesn't really want to go with that list because it's about the budget. But how will the store of the future kind of entice the consumer by saying, okay, hey, listen, how about a pizza tonight? And coming in from GOPIZZA. And how does that store of the future kind of in a way start creating that appetite, that need for consumers as well? So there's a lot that can really happen in terms of how technology can project or showcase some of these things and then create or live up to a consumer need as well.
So interesting thoughts. I think while Satyen touched upon more of the experience side of it, how virtual gets mixed with the physical, you're talking about how recommendations and how it can be more intelligent in terms of experiences, and that comes to life when you walk into a store. Saurabh, I wanted to also touch upon how loyalty plays a role in all of this, because in apparel and of course in retail at large, loyalty has been there, loyalty programs have always existed. But do you see this also changing in the way it's playing a role today, and versus what do you expect in future?
So I think if you call yourself a brand, I think loyalty has to play a major part in how you strategize and how you treat your consumers. Earlier we were talking about influencers. I think all of our customers are pretty much influencers for us. And once again, it goes back to, if the customer is experiencing your product, if they are connecting with you, if they are part of your ecosystem, I think that loyalty has to be a part of it, that brand stickiness has to be a part of it. So, and, it can be closely tracked through technology now. I mean, how many times a customer is visiting, how much are they buying? Are they buying less or more than what they were buying earlier? Are you able to sell them, talking about our business, are you able to sell them with the bottom? Are you able to sell them an accessory or a top? So that is very much part of the strategy that we have. I think it goes much beyond just loyalty and just points. I think that is just a way to kind of show appreciation and to kind of get them back. Not to downplay that. I mean, that's important. You have to show the customer that you appreciate that they're visiting, and you have to show them that you appreciate their business, and that's just. But I think it has to be a much bigger strategy in terms of loyalty. So for us. Across various touch points, whether they be physical stores or whether they be digital, you have to connect with the customer, wherever they may be present. So I think it has to be a more holistic approach rather than just this points-based system of loyalty that we have. I think that's how.
That's interesting thought. I mean, what I take away from that is about how loyalty needs to be a bit more strategic in terms of giving an holistic engagement with the brand. And, points can be a fairly transactional ways of looking at it, but, how do you go beyond? I know we are inching towards the end of this session, so I'll ask you this, Mahesh, that, your category is very on the spot, it's very impulse driven in the sense, I'm hungry now, I want to pick up a pizza and, I get there. So how do you stay on top of consumers' mind? I mean, are there some innovative ideas or what are you doing to stay on top of consumers' mind and being there in the top 3 consideration set?
Before launching the brand, I was just thinking, how do we do phase-wise plan that and do marketing calendar that every customer remembers us. So first is launch of the brand, second is launch of the cities, then third is launch in the main spots like airports where the customer remembers. These are the launches of it. Then how do we get repeat out of these things is the second strategy. So that's how then we thought of launch these AI and robotic, then the GoBot station where the customers come and see how a cheese can be put by a GoBot station or a sauce can be put by a GoBot station. The kids spend time there, they get engaged into that. Then I was thinking, what do I do next? Then I was thinking of EV vehicle, then the delivery. Then I'm thinking, what next? Then vegan. So there is new trends which will be coming and we will have to adopt to that and every phase-wise we'll have to start launching that point of it. And our products and our formats have to accommodate according to that. Otherwise the customers will think that you're the same guy, same price, nothing new is happening. So if you go to the new state, we do not only the Korean sauces or the Korean chicken, we'll go to the different, if it is the tandoori sauce, it could be makhani sauce. As per the state, it could be chettinad. So as per the state also, we'll have to localize our menu so that we show that we can cater to everybody. And that's how the format has to be done.
Any other thoughts in terms of, how do you stay on top of consumers' mind and in terms of consideration? I mean, your respective brands.
So I think, yeah, sorry.
No, after you.
Go ahead. So I think, so one, we've heard about customer centricity, but I think it's difficult to practice. So keeping the customer in the center and actually getting all your functions to think consumer is, I think, is the starting point. So if you really, just to give you an example, post-COVID, so the pants people, we are in a hybrid world, work from home. In fact, when we were in lockdown, people were only wearing their tops where you were having the shirts and you were wearing shorts in a video meeting. So I think the things were changing. So we really reinvented keeping the customers in the center. We reinvented our pants range, the entire pants range. So from a normal traditional chino, we really went to a 24-hour pant which you could really walk in the morning, jog in the morning, and then actually wear it to office and wear it to an evening if you want to wear it to a pub. So I think the whole, when you keep the consumer changing need and keep the consumer in the center and deliver a product which actually can delight him, I think then you automatically come into his set of consideration. So for me, I think it starts with consumer-centric, being really consumer-centric.
Taking the clue from there, the COVID was an opportunity, as I said. So we changed our mission. We made personalized pizza. Pizza should not be shared. So after the COVID, we changed our mission. Pizza should not be shared, only single-person pizza. So that's how it started moving.
Just to add to what Satyen said, I think the brands who will thrive in the future are the ones who are going to be not doing direct selling, but selling an experience. And then say, oh yeah, this is, come experience us, come experience our product. And yes, we also sell something on the side. So selling is not the focal point. The focal point is the experience part. And so, like I was just reading the other day, Lululemon is offering yoga classes in their stores. Now that has nothing to do with selling their product. It's just inviting people in their store, experience our store, and yes, on the side, please buy from us. So I think that's going to be, at least to my mind, I think that's going to be an important part going forward.
Just to maybe add on to this, so firstly agree with Satyen completely that the consumer has to be at the heart of what we do. Because then that's the only time when the entire organization can be geared toward the consumer's needs. So that's most important. The second thing is that every transaction or every interaction of the consumer should be looked at, in my opinion, as a new trial. Because if you take the consumer for granted and say, okay, this consumer has tried me and now I'll have loyalty without reason, that's like a very, very higher order state. But each time a consumer walks into a store, they have the option of not picking you, but someone else, and for multiple reasons. So therefore, it's always going to be about, think of every interaction with the consumer about creating a new trial. and you being in the consideration set during that new trial. So that's the second thing. The third thing on this is that how do you do all this very wisely? Now, a consumer, from a typical brand perspective, will get maybe a brand recall. You've seen a creative, you've found that out. And then how do we use, at a lot of times, the data at hand? Now, sometimes people will tell you frequency of 3, 6, this is what's important. But does it really work for your brand? And when, after they've seen a creative, should they next see a creative? What's really the recall half-life of your creative? When should they now next have the brand interaction so that you can have that mix of sustainability and at the same time staying top of mind? And then the next thing is, again, fashion, you buy clothes once and then, okay, after a few days. Food, every meal is an occasion. There's breakfast, there's lunch, there's snacks, there's dinner. How do you get into the consumer's mind space at that time? Because it's not about just buying that product and they're being there on the shelf. It's about also trying to stimulate it closer to a consumption moment and giving them more and more reasons to choose you. So I think these are some of the things that we try and look at in terms of remaining always on top. What's the time when we look at with data? And the third is giving more reasons to consume. So today you've had maybe, a pizza. Tomorrow, the most important thing that consumers have is, I would say, roti, parantha, dosa. How do you start having cheese being sold with that? How do you start creating more and more consumption moments for them with the same things you have?
That's a very interesting way of putting it, because I think what you're touching upon really is how do you personalize your communication to the consumer and the exact context of that so that they can relate to it better, instead of being bombarded by, while I'm watching a match, I suddenly start getting something which is completely random. Vis-a-vis, I see a sorry?
And that also at times 5 times in the same match.
Yeah, exactly. Vis-a-vis, I'm slightly probably hungry and I get an ad for a pizza along with something else. That's relevant. So addressing the consumer at the right context becomes important. I know we are almost at the top of the hour, and I'll pause to take any questions from the audience as well. The last thought in my mind is, when you look at being so consumer-driven, so personalized in your experience that you want to give, what do you see as the biggest barrier today? Maybe just one barrier top of your mind that comes to you. Or if there aren't any, then that's completely fine.
So as I said, I think it's just that our mindset. So how quickly we can evolve to the changing consumer behavior, and I think how can we quickly respond across. So it's not just only front end and back end or this, but I think if we can just get all in the team aligned. As I said, digital mindset is not just about investment, it's also about thinking, how can I solve bottlenecks with this, and it's not just replacing some of our physical work, but it's just aiding my function or my work. So I think that for me, it's just the mindset.
I think it's similar. It's like dogmas and silos. So a lot of functions will have their own, I would say, kind of KPI, but it's about, in the end, what matters to the consumer. And the second thing is, again, there'll be a lot of dogmas. The marketing guy will say, every 6 months I need a new ad because I have something interesting to show. But does the consumer really need that? So sometimes we try and make things more and more complex. And it's more about saying, okay, what will really add value out there? And the mindset being end consumer.
Saurabh, Mahesh, any last comments on this?
No, I think that's pretty much.
Great. Thanks a lot. I see there are some questions
Hi,
already.
good morning. This is Deepak. I represent Trent Limited. I have a small, I think it's a question related to parallel universe. So consumer behavior, I understand that part. I understand the omni-channel part also. I understand very important topics taken up by you in terms of sustainability and the patterns also. But what is my next question is that while all these things are thought about, the base is the employee, and what parallel ecosystem in terms of learning or the talent or the things are as an initiative being looked at while you are growing in other part, about the employees also pacing with that fast. Is the employee knowledge being built up in a similar manner, or the employee is willing to cope up with that market demand while customer is ready, what kind of pizza you want to buy, or what kind of cheese he's tasting, or what kind of understanding in terms of dress is it? What do we call it, a European market, not an Indian market? So I need to understand what are you as a brand investing in terms of people, scope, and how you look at that market too. Thank you.
I think, as I say, all of this is vision without execution is hallucination. And at the end, it's the team and the employees who are going to take it to every consumer. And of course, I think it starts at different levels. So like at the place where we are, we might be an MNC globally, but in India, we are like a startup. So the way we try and look at it within our team is that how do we create that startup owner's mindset from an employee wherein they feel, I'm doing something really, really worthwhile, which is building a new brand, and that's not the kind of experience that I can do. And it only doesn't stop at the employees, because employees will be a very, very small part of the ecosystem. There'll be off-role employees, there will be people in terms of channel partners. I think it's about galvanizing this entire ecosystem, which then helps the product delivery or the service delivery to the consumer. And then working with them to say, okay, what do you think? Because you are the person. At the end, the way I see my role is getting out of people's way and helping them clear any hurdles. Because I will never be the expert on each of the functions that people handle. So it's about just empowering them to say, okay, you find the solution, you have the problem. You come to me when there is something. So what is it? And then of course, having the regular training and updates for them, which allows them to be equipped. But it's more about trying to be out of the way and being the facilitator, giving them a higher order mission to do.
I'll explain it in a simple front-end way, which employees understand. The challenge which everybody will have is having the front-end people itself. Even if some other competitor pays $500 more, they're jumping. That's a fact. I'll give the story of pizza only. If 25 years back, a lot of marketing was done to explain to the customers what is pizza. It is not roti, it is not sauce. It can be eaten in India, not only in the US. But now it's not that we have to explain what is pizza. We have to only tell how different pizza can be, and pizza can be eaten fast. So I'll give my example. 25 years, the opportunity, for example, I started in hotel industry. If I had to grow, my GM had to retire or he had to move out. There was no opportunity and hardly any hotels. Let me tell you, after COVID, and I'm sure few of my colleagues from malls will agree, I never used to go and eat in food court. Now 80% of the food courts or even the F&B of the 80% of the business is coming from the mall more than the apparel point of it. So things are changing. The third point, after COVID, if you have seen the expansion, the funding, the startups in this restaurant industry, because I'm representing that, you name Third Way, you name Starbucks, you name California Boto, you name Pizza Hut, Sapphires, Devyani, how many, after 2021, you'll see how many outlets they're expanding. So what does it say? It says an opportunity to the front-end employee. Now what happens to the company? It becomes a challenge to retain them. So what do? We have to prepare a growth map that they stay with us accordingly, they grow with us accordingly. Even if they don't understand good English, even if they are dumb and deaf, the customers are accepting it. So that's why the technology is also helping us. So there's plenty of opportunities to grow if they learn fast. So again, there's attitude, there's skill set, but all this also, if you think 50% can be technology which can help, 50% whether I want to be the employee or I want to be the manager or I want to be the owner of this place. So that's the opportunity which we can provide. Thank you.
And maybe just one last thing. I think the employee engagement is always going to be a barometer of your organization's performance. And that's why we even do a regular survey on employee engagement. And in case that score is going down, you can be sure that that particular division is going to start underperforming very, very soon. And another thing that's there is about the use of incentives and programs like this. I think a lot of managers use all of this saying, if the incentive is not earned, it's a good saving for the organization. It should in fact be the other way around. Give a manageable target to the employee, let them earn this thing. And then it's going to stay motivated for them. Stay a lot more motivation. I can do that little bit of reasonable stretch. But in some places what will happen is the ASM will have a target, he'll pad it 10%. The RSM will have a target, pad it 10%. Another 10% by the sales director. And by the time it goes to the employee, he says, okay, I've given up. Which is not really the way of spurring the performance. So think of it in terms of that person out there at the field level. That extra 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 really, really matters to them. And I'll give a small example of what we did. We had a conference room training like this for our store promoters. And below each of their chairs, we just stuck a lottery ticket. And we said, okay, 1 lakh ki lottery. Okay, so we said, okay, how can this 1 lakh lottery be a certainty for you? It's not about a lottery, but this is a certainty because this is the assured incentive each of you can earn in the year. And this is how you can earn it. And we would be happiest if you can earn it. And so much so that the team leader's incentive is going to be the average that his team gets. So much so like that. Because if it's not about the end person who's going to be at the store level, everything will fall flat.
Thanks. I think with that, Adin.
Okay, this will be the last question.
Please go ahead.
Am I audible?
Thank you. Yeah. You can.
Am I audible? Yeah. So my question is specifically to Satyen. I like the viewpoint on customer centricity, how you are keeping customer centricity in core of your business, and then you are trying to build customer experiences. While you were talking about brick and mortar stores, I just want to understand what kind of platform you have deployed so that you are hearing your customers and trying to capture those insights on your merchandise, your time bound promotions, and all those other artifacts which is contributing to your business growth. How does it translate from top to your store level people? Probably like every location have their different challenges and different communication point. So I would like to understand some viewpoint on how you are capturing those insights, converting that into business growth.
I think the social media, if you were to look at it, it's opened up a new opportunity to really listen to your consumer. So it's not just a chat box which you could give. We have the customer helpline, we have the chat box, that's one part of it. But I think just to understand the consumer and address his pain points, so we have an escalation matrix in place, which actually starts from the store, moves to the area manager, then moves to the regional manager, and then if it's not sorted in 12 hours, then it goes to the regional head. So I think really using social media to listen to your consumer, listen to their grievances, and actually being agile to really sort it and close it. I think it just starts from getting everyone in the team aligned to, if you're consumer obsessed, you'll not really mind it. So you yourself is a consumer, and if you're empathetic about it, and if you put your shoes in the consumer shoes, I think that's what would you expect? That's what the consumer expectations are, and just deliver as per that. Is that what we really use and approach?
Okay,
Yes.
we'll take one more question, okay? Yep. Yes,
I
sir.
have a question, yeah. Sir, I would like to understand how is consumer behavior mapping going to happen in future, like from availability to efficiency was one, efficiency to experience was second, experience to sustainability we are right now. What will be the future? And how marketers look at it? Anybody can answer.
Okay, I'll try and attempt this. I think it's not going to be very singular like this, that this versus that versus that. For example, there is going to be no future without sustainability for any business. And at the same time, sustainability is never going to be the be-all, end-all, because there will be a bunch of organizations, each wanting to be sustainable, each wanting a higher revenue share. And that higher revenue share will only come in when that organization can win in terms of what is the brand experience or the product experience that I create for a consumer that allows me to get a higher revenue. So it'll be about experience, it'll be about product in a sustainable manner. And that can be differentiated, anything that the consumer wants. I don't know if that answers what you have in mind.
If I may add a flavor to that. So, I think what you're talking about are mega trends. What is going to be the key trend in the coming few years and so on and so forth. I mean, we can always debate, and I'm sure there can be different points of view. If COVID has taught us one thing, which is, most predictions tend to fail. But I think what is for certainty is people are more individualistic in their opinion. They have a strong opinion due to higher awareness. They have points of views. They get a lot of information, get a lot of content. As a brand, I feel what is very critical in addressing these consumers is the need to develop an individual communication. So I would say it ends up being somewhat like a personalization. Again, it's a very often abused sort of word, but what I mean is that there will be micro trends within a larger movement. When you look at this group itself, there will be people who will care deeply about sustainability. There will be people who don't care so much about sustainability, but they're probably more concerned about, say, organic, or for that matter, say, design or something like that. So there are several micro trends which coexist. It is really, the idea is to understand that and address that. So that ability will differentiate a good brand from a great brand, is, I would say. All right, so with that, I think, we are at the end of the session. I'd really like to thank our panel members here for sharing some deep insights about the relevant industries, and I'm sure everyone here, learned and, can take away a lot from this. Thank you so much.